There's people who are wrong, there are people who are pure evil. So if you'd like to talk to me about how I'm wrong, I'm absolutely here for it.
I'm dreaming of a sexually ambiguous Christmas. Hi, I'm Mark.
Hi, I'm Scott.
And so this is going to maybe be one of those things that some people, are going to find kind of be like, well, what's the big deal there? But there's this little town, this little nice little tourist trappy kind of a town in Arkansas called Eureka Springs. And
Nice.
there was some brouhaha recently about, a local park being used to set up a nativity. It's been a nativity that's been getting set up there since 1950, if memory serves correctly. And it is sponsored by a sorority there in a nearby school, and it's set up by the Great Passion Play is what it's called. I mean, it's one of those things. Okay. You have to apply for your permit, and ultimately, it was decided to let them have the permit. But when the mayor had asked, and he says he never demanded, he only says that he asked to have the permit denied, and to have these people remove the nativity, like they got really angry about it, as you might expect some people to do. And so they threatened to sue the city and all that good stuff. And so the city said, okay, you can leave it up, but we're going to be reviewing those rules. So, this is public land and this is a religious thing. And so, a lot of places in this country, have been really hardening the rules against having public land used for any kind of religious purpose. So, a nativity scene is just one of those whatever kind of things. But there's a lot of history in this town, especially between churches in the town and, like the non-churched and especially LGBT population of the town, which is really high for such a small town, kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, so the plot thickens. Okay.
Right. And I mean, we're talking like they would have, a couple diversity weekends in a year, and you would see this vehicle pull up every year, which my friends who live down there called it the Big Red Hate Mobile. And it's just this big red van that has a big picture of flames on the side, and it would have an updated count of how many days Matthew Shepard has been in hell.
Oh dear. Oh my gosh.
So if you don't know who Matthew Shepard is, he was a young gay man who was murdered for being gay.
Right.
And so it's like, that's how it begins. And then there's this I forget what they're called, but there's this Christian biker group. I can't really call them a gang.
Right.
But like they would show up and like you would routinely have confrontations between these guys and, people that lived in this town.
Yeah.
So it's like you have that whole morass of craziness.
Yeah.
And so there's that history there. But then the history goes further back.
Okay.
So this Passion Play, which like they have their own facilities there on one of the mountains, and there's this big statue of Jesus. It's like Christ Redeemer, but it's like this. It's a lot more of a stark white color. Like they have a Passion Play every year, and I mean like all year long. Like this isn't like just once like at Easter or something. This is like I think that kind of goes on and on.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's, history of passion plays within the Catholic Church, which were very anti-Semitic.
Right.
And then there's that problem. However, the guy that set it up, Gerald L.K. Smith, he was an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
He was a huge white supremacist. He founded the America First Party and was involved in a whole bunch of other things. And so like there is this very real, in the middle of the 20th century, anti-Semitic origins of the Passion Play. So the Passion Play that sets up the this nativity for a sorority, which I'm not really sure how that link came to be. The articles were not helpful.
Yeah.
So to the people that I talked to when I visited that town, because I had friends that lived there for a number of years, and I'd go down there and visit for like a week, every year, and like the reality of that anti-Semitism and that white supremacy, along with just that like straight up anti-LGBT, attitudes of the guy who set up that Passion Play are still very real to them.
Yeah. Let's do this real quick, just for the uninitiated to Christianese. Okay. Which is me. Well, not really, but just, so Passion Play. Passion Play is typically a play of the life of Christ leading up to his crucifixion. Right. Very popular around Easter time. A lot of churches will do it around Easter time. Kind of this whole deal of doing it year round is the first time I've ever heard of this, but it doesn't surprise me either, considering we're talking about Eureka Springs, right? So, so that's a Passion Play. It's basically a play kind of depicting the major events leading up to crucifixion of Jesus. Nativity. More people are familiar with the idea of nativity because it's part of our Christmas culture in America, right? So the nativity would be the story leading up to the birth of Jesus, which is I don't know what's the best way to say it. Whether or not you believe the story is true or not isn't so as relevant as the fact that it's just kind of woven into the fabric of America evangelicalism, right? It's just kind of part and parcel of America kind of thing. And so I think what I hear you saying is that these churches in Eureka Springs kind of have this history of using these theater, let's call them theater. Let's be gracious and call them theater. Using these pieces of theater to be throughout history to be anti-Semitic, to be anti-LGBTQ, to use their freedom of religion to actually browbeat the people in their communities and the way they live.
I would think that's very fair.
Is that a decent summation?
Yeah, from my experience of Eureka Springs, at least, if somebody like who's listening to this actually lives there currently, they can correct everything they want.
Right.
I will shut up.
Yeah.
But it's like every store there that is LGBT supporting or just owned by an LGBT person, like they are flying those flags.
Yeah.
Like it's not just, it's like some small towns, like when you look at those little tourist traps, you see like rainbow flags everywhere, and it's like, oh, because rainbows are nice. Like
right.
They're making a very specific statement about what they believe in.
Right.
And like if it was just any other small town, and it was a local church that had been using the park to do this since the 1950s, I'd be like, okay, like maybe it's like I get it. I get, like, you don't want to have religious stuff on public land, but I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's like it's a nativity thing. It's Christmas. It's kind of like woven into the fabric of our culture. In a way.
Yeah,
I get that. It's just like in this case, like with that weird history in this city, like I get why people would be like, no, it doesn't seem appropriate anymore to have the Passion Play setting up a nativity that, when the Passion Play was started up by an anti-Semite white supremacist Christian nationalist. It's like, that just doesn't feel good anymore.
Yeah. So when we on this show we talk about how things break the church, it seems to me, like from my perspective, I see two parallel running streams of stupidity and brokenness here. Okay? So first of all, let me deal with the non-church side of the stupidity and brokenness, which is the local government here. So where Mark and I live, outside in the Chicago suburbs, the towns here, they have a special week for everything. Like it's Brown Egg Week, and it's Firefighters Week, and it's it's Christmas, so we have the Nativity, and then whatever holiday is important to some other religious group, and we'll have the they will make sure that nobody gets left behind in having a special weekend for themselves, right? And the reason you do this is because that's how you stay out of trouble, right? You say, hey, look, we're the local government, and we don't take sides, and we don't lift up any one religion over the other. We don't lift up atheism over religion. We don't lift up religion over atheism. We don't prefer anybody. Our job here is to serve everybody in our town, in our community. And so we lift everybody up because rising waters lift all boats, right? And so the easy solution for Eureka Springs here is on the government side, is to say, well, yeah, if you want to have your nativity or your Passion Play or whatever, all good. But like next week, we're going to ask the local synagogue to put on their show. And the week after that, we're going to have, the local mosque put on their show. And the week after that, we're going to ask the LGBT community to put on their show. And everybody gets their shot. And we don't want to hear any bitching from anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's one way to go about it. The other way to go about it is just to say, nobody gets nothing. And this is why we can't have nice things. Now we're just going to use your tax money to mow the grass and show you the nicest lawn ever.
Yeah, and it's just because like we've talked about before, like there's a lot of times like there's these just antagonisms between Christian churches, especially the more fundamentalist a church gets, they can become more antagonistic.
Right.
And that's not meant to like single anybody out, who identifies as a fundamentalist. I'm just saying like that kind of tends to be like what happened.
Yeah.
Like we would talk about Greg Locke, right? We're going to put him in that fundamentalist camp.
Sure.
He doesn't speak for all fundamentalists though, in the slightest.
Right.
So like there is that. I mean, like the town, like the people, like all the shop owners that I've met in that town,
Yeah.
who referred to the Christians in the town as fundies.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, like just because like they were tired of being attacked by, you know, people from some of these churches.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned it before in the podcast. There's one day like we're driving down the main street, and in front of the courthouse is a guy holding a sign that just says, you know, women shall keep silent. You know, and there's this woman next to him wearing like a gay pride shirt, and she's like, okay, I'm silent, now what?
Right. Yeah.
You know, so it's like it's there, it's just it's in the air, it just kind of it's permeating that place.
Yeah.
And you know, when we talk about, you know, performative Christianity, you know, we don't need to do all these things in public and still be faithful practitioners of our faith,
Right.
which is not the greatest sentence I've ever heard.
Right. You know, I'm sorry for cutting you off. Go ahead and finish that.
And you know, and so it's like the fact that they're pushing to do some public land when the Passion Play itself has a pretty sizable chunk of property that they could just as easily have put it on.
Yeah.
Or there's businesses, there's other churches that own land. I mean, like some private owned property, like you could have done this in many different places in the town.
Yeah.
But for them, it has to be here.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm kind of like most annoyed about it. It's like you could have just gracefully said, you know, no, we have this huge property, we'll do it there where we have tons of parking and stuff to do this on.
Right. Yeah. You know, we are sneaking up, and I can't even believe I'm saying this. We are sneaking up on 100 episodes and a year of doing this show, if you can believe it. And I have just kind of recently come to the realization that the more we do this, the less I want to mince words, you know? And so, like, these churches in Eureka Springs, if you want to be defined by the people you hate, like, that's your prerogative, I guess. You know, you know, this is a free country, and as long as you're not out there physically hurting people, you get to believe whatever you believe. But just don't get mad at the rest of us for kind of going, oh, those churches in Eureka Springs, yeah, they're the gay haters. You know what I mean? Like you earn the reputation that you got. So now, like, don't get mad that's where you stand. You know, just own it, and that's part of the sad thing is they probably do proudly own it. You know, and if there was the Planned Parenthood, they would probably proudly, you know, throw rocks in the windows there as well. So maybe that's not the best way to express it, but I do kind of feel like, you know, all these churches, they want to be seen as positive and encouraging. K-Love. But at the end of the day, they're just horrifically horrible, hateful entities. And, like, if that's the reputation you earn, then that's the reputation you earn.
Yeah, you know, and I think, like, the other part of it is just kind of like the entitlement. Like, well, we've been doing this for, you know, 70 plus years.
Yeah.
So we should be able to continue doing this. Like, well, that's very poor logic.
Yeah.
You know, but like, it's like that kind of sense of entitlement. It's like, well, no, just own it. Like if the world is hating you, it's like, what does Jesus say about that? If the world hates you, remember it hated me first. You know, like that's in the Gospels. And I'm sorry. I just thought about it. I don't have verse reference.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, we're not, you know, when you're a Christian, you're not supposed to be surprised when people all of a sudden go, no, we're tired of dealing with it.
Yeah.
You know, but then if for your part, you can't understand why they don't want to deal with you, then that's another issue. I mean, so it's a lot. Like, I just kind of want to say like to, you know, the Passion Play and like whoever else that wants this nativity there, it's like, just put it somewhere else. Nobody's saying you can't have it. Just put it on your property. Like, don't make a big fuss about it. You know, if somebody says we don't want you to do it on public land, just gracefully say, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Now, it is kind of, you know, on the shiesty level, pretty high for the mayor after the nativity was set up to say, well, I think you should take it down. It's like, that's kind of like, well, you should have thought about that in, you know, maybe, you know, August
Exactly.
or something, or maybe October.
Yeah.
So, you know, I fully get them kind of being like, well, we set this thing up already. Just let us finish out the year. You know, like I'll give them that.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, my big takeaway is, in terms of how does this break the church, is that you can't complete the Great Commission by treating all the people you're supposed to be loving. Not evangelizing.
Or loving.
You cannot serve others by hating them, is probably how I want to say it, right? You cannot serve people by hating them. You cannot love people by hating them. You cannot draw people close to Jesus by repelling them with the stink of your homophobia and anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? at some point you've got to look in the mirror, and really ask yourself, like, if every walk of life around me finds me unattractive, is it them or is it me? You know what I mean? And that's where I'm at with this. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit, I mean, I think, for me, a big part of this is that like these groups that are specifically involved, in the passion play and, setting up the nativity, it's like you kind of have to own, like maybe, nobody involved in the passion play today is an anti-Semite or a white supremacist. But when your organization has that history and has those roots, you need to own it. And it doesn't do us any good as Christians to deny that, maybe the church that, I belong to started off as like, specifically a home for lynch mobs to start off and go hang black people. It's like, I need to own that, even though nobody today is like that, and understand, hey, if somebody else looks at my church and says, like, this is your church's history, I'd be like, yeah, it is.
Absolutely. Well, listen, this is Church's Lame. Mark and I get together every week, and we're looking for examples of how Christians and churches make weird decisions that break the entire body. And our hope is just to kind of put all those instances in a single place so that we as a church can answer the question, why is the church less relevant? Why is it less legitimate? Why does it have less credibility now? And we can stop using answers like, oh, because the young people are too woke and things like that, right? This is our repository to talk about that. So if you have something to say, by all means, leave it in the comments below. We are always grateful for the interaction, even for the person who said in more than one comment this week that I was pure evil. So you know who you are, and I'm okay with that because there's no such thing as bad PR, But there's people who are wrong. There are people who are pure evil. So if you'd like to talk to me about how I'm wrong, I'm absolutely here for it. But if you just want to call me pure evil, then I'm just going to kind of go, well, no, I'm not. And have a good day to you. So by all means, leave a comment, hit those thumbs up, hit those thumbs down, hit those subscribe buttons. And if you're listening to us on a podcast, which I didn't realize was not listed on Apple Podcasts, which it now is, thankfully, by all means, feel free to leave us a rating or send us an email. churcheslamepodcast@gmail.com.
And just to put in my last 2 cents, email us, tell us, talk to us, because, I love some of the messages that I get from people. It's wonderful to have that interaction. And with that, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.